Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Hadi Achins. As you can all see, I have with me Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, a former IG and a DIG of the NSG, somebody who's been studying our neighborhood and the adversaries of India for a long, long time. He's a strategic thinker, a writer, and of course, I'm proud to have him as a panelist on my channel as Dev Talks for many discussions starting from Grey Zone, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and various different things that we've gone through. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this very interesting discussion on the politico-terror groups in Pakistan.
Thank you, Adi. Good to be back with you.
My pleasure, sir. So, I'd like to, this is a term that I kind of coined. I don't know if it's been used earlier or not, but looking at the development in Pakistan, I think a political angle to these terror groups seems to be quite a strong thing that one can see around the place. Would you agree to something like that, sir, before we begin the discussion?
I think you're right. While the terror groups which are focusing on the India-Kashmir issue may be slightly political in the sense that they have their agenda tied to the Kashmir cause. The other groups which are focusing internally towards Pakistan, and I'm here referring to groups like TTP. Now, the TTP has evolved over a period of time, and now they're looking at mainstreaming themselves. They can only mainstream themselves if they are politically accepted. And they have been working upon it for the last 5 to 6 years to mainstream TTP in the polity of Pakistan, because unless they do that, they cannot achieve what Afghan Taliban has achieved. And that is the major reason why TTP is being reoriented today by its current leader Masood towards this particular aim of politicizing it a little more than terrorizing it. Of course, it continues to conduct terror attacks because that's its USP. But moving politically towards the center stage seems to be one of the major aims.
That's an interesting analogy, I must say, sir, and that's something that we see happening in front of us. Time and again that the Pakistani establishment have tried to have discussions and agreements with the TTP. But sir, this time something seems a little odd. One of the things that I noticed is that the minute the TTP agreement started up, things kind of pieced out for about a month, starting, I think, the first week of November till the first week of December. But the minute we see that the TTP agreement has failed, and the leadership of the TTP told the Pakistani establishment to be ready, or the Pakistani government to be ready, we also see a lot of clashes between the Taliban, which is the Afghan Taliban, and the Pakistanis starting to build up as well. As a matter of fact, you also shared me a photograph today morning of the Pakistani troops in action. Is there something to and this, by the way, I'd like to mention before I start up, is apart from the action that the Pakistani military is seeing from the TTP fractions itself. So how do you connect all of these things?
Well, actually, it's a very complex scenario. So it is very difficult to put them into one straight-jacketed issue. Because of the failure of talks, the Afghan Taliban has gone on to opposing the Pakistani forces on the Durand line. We may not be connected so deeply with what is happening between TTP and Pakistani state, right? The reason being that Durand line is an issue which cuts across party lines as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Even in the previous dispensation, Ghani, etc., everybody has opposed the Pakistani effort to fence the Durand line because they do not recognize the Durand line. As you realize that about almost 50-50 division of Pashtun population is across the Durand line. So therefore, there is this nation which exists, which has been divided by the British during a treaty. In fact, Ghani went on to say that with the end of the British India rule, the treaty lost its relevance of Durand line. And so therefore, we do not recognize the Durand line. And this fact will continue to emerge even if Taliban takes over, because in the earlier dispensation, when Taliban won, during that period also, Taliban used to show a muted resistance to Pakistani's effort to actually divide the Durand line physically. So therefore, I think that's a very emotive issue as far as Afghanistan is concerned. But as far as the linkages between the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and Afghan Taliban is concerned, they also exist. It's kind of a leader-follower relationship where Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan looks at Afghan Taliban as its forerunner to what they have achieved in Afghanistan. They can do the same in Pakistan, and that is the reason why they are politicizing themselves, coming into center stage, getting into talks politically. See, it's a big achievement for Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan that they are today talking to a state establishment officially recognized by the world on one-on-one basis. Earlier, the Afghan Taliban was moderating for the Pakistan through TTP, right? That situation is now gone. In fact, they also conducted an attack after the talks failed on a central minister of of Pakistan on 19th December.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan today comprises of 12 factions of Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. The current leader is looking at including all the militant groups, including Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, including Sipahe-Sahiba, all these groups, Huji. They are trying to get all these groups together who are anti-Pakistan establishment, current establishment, get them under an umbrella of TTP. So today, I can say with surety that TTP is today an umbrella organization trying to get all the groups, terror groups, which are opposed to the Pakistani current ideology, because they feel Pakistan has sold themselves off. The current Pakistan government has sold themselves off by not following the Salafi Islam, which the TTP is fighting for, what the Afghan Taliban fought for in Afghanistan. So therefore, their primary aim will continue to remain to fight to make Pakistan a Afghan Taliban type of a dispensation. So that is their ultimate aim. For that, they may undertake these treaties, talks, etc. to buy time, but their resistance to Pakistan state government will remain. That's my take as far as Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is concerned. So we are going to see some more action unless the Pakistani government today they started from northwest frontier. Today, almost 5 to 6 neighboring districts have all come under the banner of TTP, and they have actually established Sharia there. The rule of Sharia has been established in all these neighboring districts of northwest frontier, from where TTP actually rose in 2007. That was the year when they were formed. And today it's a very big organization. It has commanders in all the provinces. It has wings. It has various shuras which are looking after various issues. It is almost going to become a parallel government after a while. That's my take.
My God, that's going to be a dangerous scenario. We've got two Afghanistans right next to us. It's going to be a very dangerous situation. So, having said that, we also see the Taliban actually bringing up their fangs against the Pakistanis. As I mentioned in my last question, the sword is proverbially out, and that would give a lot of solace to the TTP as well. That chalo thoda help to mil raha hai wahan se. I mean, something or the other is coming. How do you see that?
You see, if you look at even what happened in Afghanistan, what happened actually till the time the Americans were there or the NATO forces were there, they were the common enemy. So even people who were opposed to the ideology of Salafism were cooperating with Taliban forces to fight the forces backed by US. Even Iranians who are actually now a worried lot were supporting the Taliban actively. But that particular force having gone away from that particular blanket cover, having gone away from Afghanistan, today Iran is a worried entity. Russia is a worried entity. All the CARC countries are worried entity because their major security cover has now been withdrawn. Pakistan is facing other problems as far as Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is concerned, because Pakistan is now to deal with the Durand Line. Because after all, there are a number of militants which are floating around. And they are all, as I said, they are all being drawn by Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan under its wings. They celebrated their leaders' freedom when Afghan Taliban released their second emir. I think he was number 2 in Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. He was released from the jail, and it was celebrated in a big time. So therefore, everybody is now being brought under the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. They followed it up in fact, with a number of attacks, series of attacks which took place in Pakistan. And then they went in for the talks for a 1-month ceasefire, which has failed as usual, and it is going to fail in future.
But so somewhere down the line, the Pakistanis have used these guys. So there is some amount of grudge which also exists, because Pakistan has been known to, and I mean, I won't be able to prove what I'm trying to say, but there are enough and more talks about the fact that the Pakistani establishment has used parts of the Tehrik-e-Taliban to gain certain influence within Afghanistan, to gain certain actions around in the particular region as well. There were certain actions conducted on the Tajikistan border as well, about 5-6 years ago. That's one of the reasons we saw the Russians and the Tajik forces actually just arm up the minute the Taliban came into power. So, isn't there a would you put it across as a certain amount of resentment from the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan that they used us and threw us off in the garbage bin?
Okay, for this you have to understand the evolution of Tehrik-e-Taliban. When Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan was evolved or established in 2007, they were giving support to all the terrorists who were running away from Afghanistan on the borders of Afghanistan-Pakistan borders. They were sheltering them. Whether they were Al-Qaeda or whether they were from the Taliban groups, they were all being given shelter. Because of this, TTP gained sympathy both with Afghan Taliban, and Pakistan saw it as a convenient development for them to keep their hedging strategy up against the Americans should they need it later. So therefore, it was a marriage of convenience which took place around 2003. AQ was totally, in fact, AQ used to be a guiding factor of TTP. Under initially under Osama bin Laden, then after he got killed, then it was his number 2 Ayman al-Zawahiri who has been guiding TTP, and that is why you will see now that TTP has also evolved in the form of attacking. Now they are no more attacking civilian targets. They are in fact, Ayman al-Zawahiri has told them, advised them that look, attack the security establishment. Then only your credibility in the mainstreaming of TTP will take place, and that is what they are doing now. True. So therefore, initially they did start the way you are saying 2008, 9, 10, up to about 2011. They were, you remember the Americans picked up their operations in 2011 onward. Initially, Afghanistan was dragging along after the initial capture of Afghanistan by the US-led forces. The government got established. Corruption started going in. It was meandering around because the Americans were focusing on Iraq. It was only when they withdrew from Iraq that they started focusing back on Afghanistan. And it is from that time that TTP became a target of the Americans. Also, the TTP came to know through their own sources that Pakistan was taking the help of the US drones to kill their leaders. And this got them cheesed, and this got them cheesed off very badly. And that is how TTP then started attacking relentlessly the Pakistani populace around in that part of the region, as also the security establishment. So it's evolved over a period of time. Initially, yes, you're right that they did give them a tacit support without the knowledge of the Americans. But subsequently, when the TTP saw the game of Pakistan establishment, double game, remember they had held the Afghan Taliban number 2 also currently in the jail. So Pakistan had been playing this double game for quite some time. I think sometimes or the other they had to get caught. They got caught by the TTP. And TTP is today today calling the shots as far as their internal matters are concerned with Pakistan.
As a matter of fact, yes, sir. Right when the first American attacks happened, I remember hearing the name of TTP. At that time, I didn't, focus into geopolitics too much, but I still remember hearing the name of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, who's taking care of the refugees from Afghanistan post the attack and stuff. And
Absolutely.
it was projected as a
So
very,
these are all covers.
yeah, it was
These are all
projected
covers. These
it's,
are all covers.
it's interesting. Pakistan needs to be a marketing manager for some, Amazon or something like that. I think they'll do really well. So there's another organization that rears its head and that's supported, we all know, by the establishment of the country. It's the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, which is today being put down by the current establishment or the current dispensation, so-called in power, led by Imran Khan, with talking about yaar ye kharab hai, yaar ye wo hai, and this and that. But there was a point of time Imran Khan was standing right with them, and Sheikh Rashid and all these guys were standing right with the same guys. Here is an organization that is brought up to create political instability within the country, and we see this happening again and again. My question to you is that it resulted in a Sri Lankan getting lynched, and the TLP has come out and actually openly said that this is what we've done. Is it really being controlled by the establishment?
Look, whenever these establishments begin with, they must have some support. See, all of a sudden, TLP came in 2015, from nowhere.
Nowhere, yes.
Just emerged.
Millions of people.
Emerged from nowhere. Millions of people suddenly started coming. So therefore, it must have an establishment backing. It must have the support, infrastructure, communications to actually mobilize such forces. You can't just mobilize a force overnight just by giving one speech. It's not so easy. So therefore, and there are so many of them in Pakistan who do this. If this was true, then I suppose everybody should have been able to mobilize such large crowds which the TLP managed to get. So therefore, in 2015, it was used as a political tool by the Pakistani army. Remember when actually it was a pro Nawaz Sharif government, when they asked for a military help, Bajwa said that we will not intervene. We will not intervene militarily. We need to resolve the issue with talks. He actually refused to intervene. And what that indicates? That indicates that he had an ulterior motive of letting the situation deteriorate so much that ultimately, when they intervene through their, the linkage which we are talking about, the situation was suddenly disappeared. Imran Khan, they were interested in promoting Imran Khan, and that is why Imran Khan at that time was seen as supporting TLP, supporting their cause, and etc. etc. So therefore, Imran Khan and TLP were friends in the year 2017. But the 2017 riots are quite famous. In fact, even today you can read about it in the net, what the TLP did at that point in time. But it was, why should an establishment like Pakistan Army, which is a professional army headed by a person who put in about 40 odd years of military life, should allow a situation to deteriorate so much that the government of the day is actually, how should I say, they were embarrassed. And then they intervene, get the situation under control, conduct an election. In fact, there were rumors that they might not conduct an election. People thought that Pakistan Army will take over, but Pakistan Army has learned its lesson. It doesn't want to burn its fingers by taking over the country's rule. It will continue to proxy now. Proxy has somehow become synonymous with Pakistan. Now it is doing a proxy rule also internally. So Imran became the proxy. Now they're looking for somebody else as proxy, I suppose. And Imran is now finding himself being victim of the same card which threw him up as a prime minister. So what TLP is doing, and also when you realize that a group has gone beyond a particular level of popularity, it starts assuming independence. It starts feeling that it is able to now control things by itself, and then it becomes too big for even the army to control it. Today, I hear a statement in the media. In fact, you can read it on the net. I just read it. that the DGISI has said that please do not put my photographs or pictures on the net. That means he's scared that one of these guys who are now rogue elements might just knock him off. We need to read something more in this. Why has he done this? Why has he put the statement that please do not put? I will share this photograph, this statement with you. You can put it as part of the current program and show it. Why? That means even the ISI is today scared. The DGISI today is scared that he might get very eliminated sometimes in weaker moments when he's doing his nefarious activities. So I suppose it is again the story gone bad. They wanted to control, and a political party is very difficult to control. Let me tell you.
Yes.
You can control a small terror group, but moment it starts assuming political role, and that's what is happening to TTP also. It has now started assuming political role, and mainstreaming a political role means it's very difficult for you to kill also. I mean, for you to knock them off like a military man would do. That's not possible. Nawaz Sharif is safe. Pervez Musharraf is safe. Why? Politically, they are too big now to be knocked off. It could be done about 40 years back to Benazir Bhutto. I'm sorry, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto or Benazir Bhutto. In fact, Benazir Bhutto was eliminated by TTP.
TTP.
So situations evolve, organizations evolve, and I think today we are seeing the bad effects of what Pakistan has been indulging in the last few years.
As a matter of fact,
the day the Kashmiri cause is nearing a solution, they will have another set of problems.
Whoever agrees to that is finished. They're already portraying as one Niazi lost Bangladesh, the second Niazi is going to lose Kashmir, and those cartoons are already there in the social media, not of India, of Pakistan itself.
Yeah, it's going to happen if the way they are handling the terror groups, they'll become the Frankenstein monsters afterwards.
So one of the most interesting thing that I kind of analyze is that the TTP more or less consists of the TLP. I'm sorry. Consists of more or less Punjabis, and the army just backed off, and they just didn't want to do anything because Punjab is Punjab at the end of it. You'll have a revolt within the army as well. It may be the soldier who's firing right now is family member within his crosshairs, and it's a very dangerous situation. So are they now in a place where they thought they were riding a monster? They could just rile it up every time that they wanted to. Do you see this thing getting riled up in the future again by the establishment? Automatically, fair enough. I mean, as you said, that it might have developed a brain or metamorphosized into something different. But would you think that they will take this risk again?
I've been wondering about, we keep talking that Pakistan Army is the real seat of power. The ISI is the real conspirator of Pakistan, which does all the dirty tricks for Pakistan. But there has to be some brain, a long-term brain, which is doing all this. Pakistan Army sees changes of its chiefs over a period of time. Who is coordinating this? The civilians are out of the window after every 2 years or 3 years. You see a change of government. But there is someone who's got a long-term view of ensuring that the Pakistan remains in a state of chaos or I would say in a state of chaos and an anti-India posturing, so that their existence of this establishment called Pakistan Army, ISI, remains unbroken. Chiefs come and change. They are also like us. Their army is also like us. We join as second lieutenant, they rise up to become chiefs or whatever it is, right? But who is doing this long-term coordination of theirs? And it is here that I suspect. And you will also find that once the Pakistan Army senior officer retires, he generally doesn't meddle in politics. Have you noticed this? You rarely see a Pakistani general coming back to politics after he's retired.
Never.
Unless he's been the chief or something like that. They just fade away. Which is that thread which is taking them along this line of meddling in terrorism, proxy wars, uh, guiding the state in a manner that you use one political party, another terror group against the second, against the ruling establishment, remove them from power. How are they evolving themselves? Is there somebody who is quietly doing it? My take is, I mean, I've been thinking over it for a while. What is that common thread? Is it just the ethos of the organization that yes, we are born to rule? We are born to rule? I don't think so. There'll be many ambitious people who would like to cut over each other's throat and get across the leader of Pakistan Army.
We don't see that. Yes.
If you don't see all that, very rarely. Once you saw it during General Zia's time, but you rarely see one of the corps commanders raising his heads. I feel there is a group of retired people who remain unknown to the world, who are actually managing quietly the path of the Pakistan army without getting to. This is just a wild guess, very wild guess. Is the CPU? Where is the CPU? Is the CPU so strong that despite the leader, Pakistan army will continue to remain focused towards ensuring anti-India or two-nation theory kind of a narrative continue to remain alive in the country? One, and two, that do internal mechanizations with terrorist groups and political parties to ensure that the writ of Pakistan army remains. Are these two ideologies being so deeply embedded that anyone who becomes the leader follows it? That is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is there is somebody who's guiding them, somebody who's streamlining them, that look, you will follow this path, irrespective of who comes to power.
I mean,
who gave this idea to Qamar Bajwa to seek extension? First time it has happened.
yeah.
You see, once you become a president, yes, you can extend yourself. But here was the case where he sought extension, probably for the favor which he gave to Imran Khan to get into power, and said, now it's your turn to oblige, so that the common thread remains. And you have the previous Pakistan army chief going to Saudi Arabia and becoming an advisor to Saudi Arabian government. Point I'm trying to say is that there is some kind of a power management which is taking place within the Pakistan security establishment, which ensures that they do not fight with each other. Have you ever seen? Rarely you would have seen corps commanders fighting among themselves. For them, the corps commanders are the regional satraps. The 10 corps commanders who are there, they are considered as the regional bosses. Or is it that the power has been shared in such a manner that everybody is satisfied?
Nobody's ever satisfied.
It is this question which bugs me, and because of this, I feel that there is something which is more deeper than what we see. We are only seeing the symptom. We are only seeing the symptoms. We are not seeing the the cause, the real cause. How and why? This is the question which keeps bothering me. Why their civil society doesn't rise up? What restricts them? That's I've left it open-ended. It's a question which you also need to think. We all need to think.
I was honestly, sir, I have had this question and I've asked multiple people about this. So, I to close this interview, I want to ask you a couple of things. One is the factor about Islam today, which is in discussion, especially in the Southeast Asian and the Middle East region, quite a bit. Islam in the Middle East, after the foundation of oil there, became very radicalized. It became stronger and stronger and stronger because a lot of the power and the money came in, so they kind of went their own way in terms of the Wahhabism and so on and so forth. And today we see them realizing the fact that the oil money is going to go down. We need to get into the mainstream, otherwise we're just going to wash away into history.
Yeah.
And in the Southeast Asian region, we see that it's a moderate Islam. They do also have radical elements within them, but there is a certain moderation,
Yeah,
tolerance,
not much.
pubbing, clubbing culture, disco dancing, this,
Absolutely.
that, all that stuff is there. It's a more moderate sort of a thing. And we see Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be the king of all this stuff, suddenly making very, very bold decisions. Having said that, we see the Pakistanis going in a totally different direction. Now, that just tells you the thought process of a society that has been brought up, and this thing has gone so deep inside them. Question to you is, sir, when an organization like the Tehreek-e-Taliban finally does, and I'm sure it will happen, what you said, they want to make it into an Afghanistan, does take power, would you see the kind of resistance that you see in Afghanistan when the Taliban actually took power within Pakistan?
There would be. There would be. Bulk of the Pakistan society, to me, it may be anti-India, but it is not as radical as what is seen in the northwest frontier or in Fatah or in the regions in Afghanistan or Taliban. It is just that the groups have started selling their narratives so well, thanks to the Pakistani army meddling into such a kind of a politics that the image created is that Pakistan is fully radicalized. No, I don't think Pakistan is fully radicalized. Problem what they're going to face is that their ruling establishments and their tools which they are using are radicalized. Right now, the thought that why aren't they moving like the Saudis or the UAE or for that matter what is happening in the southeast, for that they need another jolt, I suppose. See what happened in the Middle East was always characterized by three things: oil, US presence, Palestine. Right, these were three major issues which were actually guiding the Middle East geopolitical situation. The US was 120,000 troops just before they started drawing down. They are far lower in their presence now.
True.
Because for them, oil has lost the relevance after the shale gas and all other alternate energy sources have come in. So for the US, while oil is still important, but it's not that important. Okay, US has found a proxy in Israel to control this part of the region. So it starts working on a solution where Israel becomes their front to enter into negotiations with Saudi Arabia, UAE, and they have been successful also. See the Abraham Accords, which has just happened, and now they are talking of a West Asia Quad. What is West Asia Quad? Is US, Israel, UAE, and India. It is already taking shape.
True.
Saudi Arabia was about to join this accord, but just in the last minute, I think they developed wet feet, so they just withdrew. But on ground, they are working towards this kind of a dispensation, and the Saudis are trying to gain the leadership of the Muslim world. That was the next issue. Now, the matter is getting little complicated by the Turkey's current president's ambitions, Erdogan's, who seems to be trying to create a leadership position for himself, which is acting as some kind of another pole in the Muslim world, wherein he is trying to assume the old Ottoman Empire's glory. There is another factor which is now coming in very very quietly, which none of us are really observing it now, is the Egyptian angle. Now, Egypt, along with the countries around it, which includes Jordan and Syria, etc., is also trying to create its own sphere of influence. Couple this with the Iranian efforts now. Now, Iran is trying to take advantage of the vacuum which has now been created in Afghanistan. So it is playing double game. Iran is playing a double game by ensuring that it is trying to ensure its security as far as Hazaras are concerned. So it is trying to create a dialogue with the current Afghan Taliban government so that it doesn't bother with it doesn't have to bother with another set of refugees. I mean, they're already having so many refugees in their country from Afghanistan. And if the situation goes bad, it will be bad call for Iran. So Iran has now started becoming part of all the negotiations which are trying to somehow solve the Afghanistan Taliban government's problems, whether it is aid to them, whether it is convincing them that start having an inclusive government. They're not very happy with the government formation because the Pakistanis took a lead here by ensuring that the Haqqanis got most of the plump seats in the governance, and only one Shia chap was part of the government. So therefore, Iranians are not very happy with it. So they are now looking at ensuring that they come on good wicket with Taliban, get some representation for Hazaras, because Hazaras are even now being attacked by the ISK. And if the Hazaras start rising up in revolt, then it will be problem for Iran, given the borders which they have. They already have problems with Pakistan, direct borders which they are sharing with Pakistan. Iran. So Iran is now becoming trying to take a center stage, include Russia, etc., in this discussion, and trying to ensure that Afghanistan Taliban is stabilized, quote unquote stabilized, because everybody is looking for its security of the nation, of its own country. Where does it leave Pakistan? It has been virtually isolated, except in the grouping of China and Russia.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, and with the current situation of Durand Line propping up, in fact, I was reading somewhere that Pakistan is thinking of reworking its policy towards Afghanistan Taliban. That's a big statement, but if it comes out true, then you know what the Talibanis are. Talibanis have tasted blood twice successfully. The first time it was the cousin of Taliban called Azam Mujahideens who defeated the Russians. The second time round, it is the Talibanis themselves who defeated the Americans. So what is Pakistan? I mean, Pakistan is going to be a very, very, and with Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, in fact, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan said that we look up to Afghan Taliban and we are part of them. The Afghanistan Taliban kept quiet on it and did not encourage any further. That was more to actually please the Pakistanis, because Afghanistan is in a bad state. They know it. They don't have money. They don't have food. They are in a very dire state. They have to look for. Why do you think Taliban is so quiet? They are somehow looking at the Europeans giving them assistance. And here is a situation where Pakistan is trying to stop even the small little assistance which we are trying to give them by stopping our trucks, etc., going towards Afghanistan. So somewhere this must be hitting them. Somewhere it must be hitting them. Pakistan can't control a nation. And then, like I said, everybody has a brain. And now that brain has a power. It has a seat. It has a parliament.
And weapons and so on and so forth.
And weapons. And weapons, so you don't have to even think about. Their adamancy can be gauged from the fact that till date, they have not given the contract to anyone to run Kabul airport, not even Turkey. A country which is Hungary, whose people are suffering, yet they have the audacity not to even give very small concessions to the nations, which are known to be favorably disposed. They have not signed the contract to run the Kabul airport. So it's not going to be simple. Pakistan will, in fact, it is already isolated. It is going to continue to get isolated. Today, they have bought 10 J-10C aircrafts from China. I mean, they have entered into an agreement. They have no options. You can look at Rafale, you can look at F-18, you can look at any damn country in the world today, but they have no one else but China. What does that speak of? Even if then the Pakistanis are unable to understand, their leadership is unable to understand, I think they deserve what they will get in the time. Internally, they will be torn to pieces. Externally, they'll be isolated, and the Muslim world will start ignoring them. Saudi Arabia has given them some assistance to Afghanistan. None have recognized, despite being so-called the part of the bigger Muslim world. Why haven't they recognized? They know that this particular situation will be a threat to Prince of Saudi Arabia. The Osama bin Laden's narrative will start playing up in Saudi Arabia. He was from Saudi Arabia, and his narrative was Salafism. Definitely, UAE doesn't want Salafism there. You go and see in Dubai.
Fantastic.
It's mini Bombay. It's mini Bombay. I think these kings are realizing they're looking at their future much better than the. I mean, I would call these Pakistanis the nitwits here. Even if they don't grow up now, I don't know when they're going to grow up, and they will take Afghanistan along with them. Yeah,
it's amazing, sir. I
and
think. Please, sir.
No, and the Europeans are doing worse. They dealt with the situation in such a manner that now they have no say at all.
Yeah, they've put their hands up and said.
They have no, they are unable to influence. How do they influence?
Nothing.
The Americans still have some leverages here, but the Europeans have nil, except for assistance, which the Indians also have. I mean, we are also, but at least we are trying. We've got the Qatar Doha link going very well for us. We have the Russian angle going very well for us. And with the Iranians, we are traveling a tightrope walk. I think we will be able to get Afghanistan under our influence. Our foreign policy guys are quite good. I think they are managing the situation well. They just need to put the foot on the door, and then the door will open.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, sir, and the Pakistanis recognize it with the recent purchase of the drones that we've done from Turkey. I think they shed tears of blood. So, I mean, it's something that we must understand. And you've said that the Pakistanis ordered these 10 J-10s. Fair enough, but the Pakistanis will have to sell their souls to the Chinese for that, and that's something I don't think the Pakistanis even realize.
Nothing comes easy from China.
And if China is such a great friend of the Pakistanis, they won't be shutting off this entire CPEC project and looking for an alternative through Chabahar and through Iran and that entire other way. So it's something that one must try and decipher. That I absolutely agree with you, and I think the 4 or 5 people that you refer to who are actually running Pakistan need to get a little bit. They need to put their little finger into the plug point to get a little shock, because they need to open their eyes and realize what is happening. Absolutely. I think they've become old and senile, and they're not able to gauge reality, which is coming their way. Sir, this has been a very interesting interview. I think we've ripped the skull and bones of Pakistan to actually read what is happening inside. But of course, there's that one big question that you've asked is who actually runs Pakistan? As a matter of fact, you and I and General Sudhakarji discussed the real owners of Pakistan, the ISI. But when you put it across in a way that, the ISI cannot be in a continuum all the time. There has to be some change somewhere or the other. And they seem to be in a straight line continuum. They follow the same. It's like a book that they follow. Kashmir nahi chal raha, okay, Punjab mein shuru ho jao. Ye nahi chal raha, ye kar lo. It's a very simple sort of a thing that they do. And it's a mystery for us to understand, sir. Thank you so much for lighting up that fire in this, dark hole of Pakistan. I'll catch up with you in the next year for another subject, another day. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Jai Hind.